Thank you very much. The next person to address us is the London-based New African magazine's current editor-at-large. He has spent much of his 41 years of active journalism at the magazine, having served as its assistant editor for 6 years, deputy for 5 years, editor for 15 years, before retiring from active service in 2014. Africa and her many causes have been his passion. His personal column in the magazine, Baffour's Beefs, which has been running continuously in New African magazine since 1987, is a big hit and a must-read for the magazine's worldwide consumer base. He has covered crusades of the church where Pastor Kumuyi was the main speaker. In 2006, he had an extensive interview with Pastor W.F. Kumuyi, which was published in the New African magazine, highlighting his life, calling, and ministry. Indeed, while he was editor of the magazine, Pastor W.F. Kumuyi at a point had a column in the magazine called Nuggets in a Nutshell, which focused on leadership and people management. Ladies and gentlemen, to present a review of Kumuyi, the defender of the faith, I have the singular honor to welcome Mr. Baffour Ankomah.
Hallelujah. Yeah, I've been given the task to review this book. So I wrote something down, and I hope our General Superintendent is listening in today. And I'm going to stand on the protocols that has already been expressed and say all protocols observed. I show respect to the leadership and the high table and everybody in this hall, ladies and gentlemen. There was a time the Europeans put out the idea that an African cannot be a philosopher. But an African proverb says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. If this is not philosophy, I don't know what philosophy is. I understood the import of this proverb when I got a copy of Kumuyi, Defender of the Faith, the book on whose strength we have gathered here today. This book, 325 pages long, including the index, was written by 4 authors: Banji Oje Wale, Shogun Babatope, Emeka Ezaze, and Tunde Opebi. But there are 48, I repeat, 48 other people who helped with the writing of the book by becoming content contributors. They contributed content. There are another 20 people who helped by being enablers. They enabled the writing of the book. So, if we do the mathematics, we get 4 plus 48, that makes 52, plus 20, that makes a total of 72 people that made this book possible. So, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. What great African philosophy. In 2006, I was given a commission by Pastor W.F. Kumuyi, the General Superintendent of Deeper Life, to write a book on deeper life as a church. And I'm very pleased that just before I came, Pastor James Sabre came to sit by me and greeted him because he was part of this commission. Looking at the 72 people who helped with the writing of Kumuyi, Defender of the Faith, I can now understand why I could not finish writing that important book. 72 verses 1. Mine was a lonely walk done by one person, my poor self. I was facilitated by the GS to go around Nigeria to do interviews searching the book. So I did some interviews. I was then operating from my base in London, where I was editor of the Pan-African magazine, New African. So I would fly from London to Nigeria do some interviews, and go back to London. With my normal heavy work as editor of a monthly magazine, it was tough combining magazine editing with the research and writing of the Deeper Life book. In the end, I was defeated by the sheer volume of work on my head, and the book could not be finished. So I make an appeal standing before you today. And if the GS is listening, that I am now in semi-retirement without the care of editing a monthly magazine. And therefore, if I'm given a second chance by the GS and the church to resume the research on the book and its writing, I promise that I will be able to finish it this time. So please, GS and the church, give me a second chance. Why do I say so? It is because over the last 5 years, I've become an expert on books and their writing. Last year, I completed the editing of the definitive encyclopedia for Africa called the Africa Fat Book, a whole 1,200 pages long. Done as a collaborative work with the African Union, the shorter version of the Fat Book, called the Presidential Edition, which is 780 pages, was published in September 2020 for African presidents and their top officials. The longer version, called the Scholars Edition, which is 1,200 pages long, will come out in the next few months. The energy I put into that Africa Fat Book nearly killed me. By the time we finished the book in the middle of last year, I had lost 22 kilos of my body weight through illness induced by the overwork on the Fat Book. And I had to undergo 2 eye surgeries to remove cataracts that wanted to blind me. Apparently because I had been sitting too long in front of my computer working on the Fat Book. So the Africans say, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. I've learned my lessons, bitter lessons, and if I'm given a second chance at writing the Deeper Life book, it will not be like 2026. So today we have Kumuyi, Defender of the Faith. It is a book everybody must have a copy. I hear 250,000 copies have been printed. And how many people are in the Deeper Life Bible Church alone? Over 1 million. That was the figure we were working with in 2006. I think by now you must be pushing nearly 1.5 million members worldwide. Therefore, if you don't rush to get your copy, you end up being disappointed. The 250,000 copies would have gone. The book deals expertly with the life and times of Pastor Kumuyi. The man, I've always told my wife, who does not know him, that he really deserves the title Man of God. Other pastors may pretend to be men of God, but this one, Pastor W.F. Kumuyi, really is a man of God. I have known him, and I can vouch for it. I first met him in 2006 when a junior Deeper Life pastor in London brought him to my humble office at New African. They came in a very small car, and I told the pastor jokingly, how do you bring such a big man in a small car? But that is Pastor Kumuyi for you. He had no complaints with a small car. He came in, we discussed the issue at hand. It was about me doing publicity for the church, and he writing a column for New African. That visit grew into a big relationship between the GS and my humble self. In the process, I got to know him better and more intimately, and he loved me, I must say, and I loved him back. I followed him during crusades in Nigeria, Togo, Ghana, and Sierra Leone, and saw how great he is. In fact, I hold a record, a very enviable record, and I'm here to know that anybody has beaten this record, and I'm very pleased that Pastor Abre is here. I'm the only person in Ghana whose humble home in Kumasi was visited by the GS in 2006. He had come to Ghana for a church event, flown in from Lagos to the Accra airport. And then he told Pastor Abre that he wanted to come to my house from the Kumasi airport before going to his final destination at Brofreju in Kumasi, where the church had built a house to accommodate him. I had come to Ghana from London, and in fact, on that very day, I was going to catch the plane from Kumasi to Accra to prepare for my departure the next day to London. I had to suspend everything. So from the Kumasi airport, the whole entourage of people and cars that had gone to welcome the GS at the airport drove to my home at Odinho Kwadaso, where the GS and his now late wife prayed for me and blessed the house. Thank you, GS, for honoring your humble servant in that big way. So, reading Kumuyi, Defender of the Faith, I can see on the pages of this well-researched book, in full color, the Kumuyi I knew from 2006 to 2010, when Allah saw him in person, when I flew to Lagos from London to console him at Ayobo after the death of his first wife. So, what does the book say? On page 3 in the introduction, we see this line, and the authors write, Pastor Kumuyi believes, teaches, and lives out the Bible. This is exactly as I knew him between 2006 and 2010. He is simple, frugal, to the point. Have you noticed that he has forever remained a pastor for all these years, when his contemporaries and other church leaders have moved on to become bishops, archbishops, prophets, and even popes? But he has remained a pastor. I remember when I interviewed him for a special report on the church in 2006 in New African magazine, which I titled, A Church So Different. He told me point blank, quote, I don't like anything that is turned into a show or drama. Some pastors like the drama rather than the results. I want the results rather than the drama. He went on to say, I have also looked at the ministry of Jesus Christ, and I want as much as possible to follow the life and ministry of Jesus Christ. So in the relationship and interaction with people and the life I live, I want it to be the life of Christ. I want the Jesus type of ministry. I don't want anything fake. That is your general superintendent for you. And his kind of life and service is excellently captured by this book we are here to launch. For those who have not read the book yet, let me whet your appetite with the following passages, which I know you will find affinity with. I found affinity with them because I was told about them in 2006, and for 4 years I saw them in action. On page 147, the authors say, quote, we live in an era when preachers and public speakers who have the skill to manipulate the emotions of the people carry the day because most people are incredibly gullible. On the contrary, Pastor Kumuyi in his messages never aims to excite his audience. Instead, he preaches in such a way as to appeal to the people's reasoning, as to make informed decisions and act under the genuine conviction of the Spirit, which sometimes comes with sincere emotional expressions. And that is so true. On the same page 147, they go on to say, Pastor Kumuyi is not a believer in frivolous emotional outbursts that are now common in many worship places. He maintains a dignified posture, and he ministers and does not depend on the props of drama and rhetoric. His public prayers are simple, short, and straightforward, without any demonstration of public showmanship, yet they are always efficacious. Needless to say that such a minister must be a man of protracted and ardent secret prayers, unquote. Everyone here in this room knows this to be true. On page 73, the authors say, Pastor Kumuyi's passion for God was such that he would trade anything in to uphold God's name and preach the gospel fully. He spent his salary wholly on the ministry. Even gifts from admirers and well-wishers were totally channeled to the work of the ministry. Till date, he does not maintain a personal bank account, and he does not own any personal property in his name. The ministry is his life, unquote. This is a special pastor, I tell you. In this day and age, a pastor does not maintain a personal bank account. Which planet does he live on, this pastor? When pastors are boasting about the number of jet planes they have, this one, Pastor Kumuyi, does not maintain a personal bank account. I was told about this in 2006 by the church secretary, Pastor Nandozi, that even when the personal monetary gift is presented to Pastor Kumuyi, he directs that such money or gift be deposited in the account of the church. Pastor Kumuyi, God bless you. On page 176, the authors say, the lesson here is that of a servant leader willing to forsake his convenience for communal purposes and always seeking the greater good of the greater majority, unquote. Then the authors go on to say on page 91 that there is no accoutrement of luxury and pomp around Pastor Kumuyi to trigger a craving and lust for worldliness among the members or leaders. On page 154, the authors turn round and say, outside the pulpit, and when dealing with individuals, Pastor Kumuyi exudes such disarming gentleness, tenderness, and love that often baffle those who come in close contact with him. His insight, keen listening skill, and sense of humor make him quite an engaging and personable. I can vouch for this. That is how he dealt with me between 2006 and 2010. So how has the life and service of this great man of God impacted members of the Deeper Life Church and Ministry? On page 121, the authors say, talking about members, it is equally observed that simplicity, modesty, and moderation characterize the life of an average Deeper Life member. It dictates his or her taste in dressing, appetite, and the conduct of ceremonies. And I know this to be true because my wife's sister and her husband are Deeper Life members, and we know how they conduct their lives at home. The authors go on to say on page 117, there is something unique about the members of Deeper Life everywhere they went in society. Their transformed lives and practical holiness and righteousness positively impacted others in society. As they professed the born-again experience, it was not just in words, but also in practice. It was easy for the people they lived and worked with to notice the profound changes that are taking place in their lives. And this is so true. I've known many Deeper Life members, and they are an honor to God. You are an honor to God, Deeper Life members. And you should really clap for yourself. You deserve it. On page 122, the authors go on to say about the members, the impact of Deeper Life Bible Church, therefore, was not only felt in the churches alone, but also in the different offices and workplaces and marketplaces as well. Since most members of the church are not dishonest, please listen to this. They are not dishonest, will not falsify records, divert or misappropriate funds, cheat, tell lies, but live a very straightforward, honest life, and are diligent at work. They were highly sought after in many companies and organizations. The church received requests from different companies and organizations for members of the church to work in vacant positions in those organizations. What a church, I tell you. What a church. I was right to title the special report within 2006, A Church So Different. Deeper Life is a church so different, and you should be proud of yourselves. On page 124, the authors go on to say, for more than 4 decades, and still counting, the Deeper Life Revolution has continued to be the reference point for true and practical Bible-based gospel Christianity, not only in Nigeria, but also in Africa and wherever the church has been planted worldwide. And this is true. This is very true. The authors now turn to the miracles that have accompanied Pastor Kumuyi's work. On page 17, they say, there is no argument where Pastor Kumuyi stands on the question of the fountain of miracles and signs and wonders in his ministry. When he ministers, his primary objective is the miracle of salvation, which usually brings forth other forms of meaningful and enduring miracles. On page 11, the authors quote Pastor Kumuyi as saying, quote, I don't touch or lay hands on people to get them healed or delivered. I only pray in the name of Jesus, unquote. I can testify to this because I saw it in action for 4 years. Between 2006 and 2010, I followed Pastor Kumuyi around West Africa in crusade that took us from Nigeria, Togo, Ghana, Sierra Leone, and back. After ministering at these big crusades, he would stand at the podium and pray a simple, normal, and short prayer for healing and deliverance for anybody in the crowd who needed it. He never did laying on of hands. There was usually a good 100 or so yards between the podium and the crowd. So there was no physical contact between the pastor and the people. I particularly remember the crusade in Freetown, Sierra Leone, and I'm glad Pastor Abre was here because he was there too. It was a 3-day crusade, and every night Pastor Kumuyi prayed the same short prayer, and the blind got their sight back. The lame and the paralyzed stood up and walked. Different ailments were healed, and even a madman, very popular in the streets of Freetown, was healed instantaneously, and he came forward to testify, still dressed in his madman's clothes and wearing 2 different types of shoes. He could now talk coherently and narrate what had happened to him. Some might say, but how do you know if this was not prearranged? Well, wait for the next one. The mother-in-law of the owner of the hotel where we stayed in Freetown, Pastor Kumuyi stayed in a bungalow in the hotel grounds up there. This mother-in-law had been paralyzed for 2 years. Bedridden, her carers would wheel her every morning to sit in the doorway to get some fresh air and sun. We arrived at the hotel in the evening. The next morning, the woman was wheeled outside her door for the usual fresh air and sun. But this morning, something incredible happened to her. We didn't know about it until the next day when she came to the crusade with her son-in-law, the owner of the hotel, to give a testimony. She said the previous morning, as she was sitting outside her doorway enjoying whatever sun he could get, Pastor Kumuyi walked past to go to the crusade. As his shadow crossed where the woman sat, some energy came into the woman's paralyzed limbs. Suddenly, she could stand up for the first time in 2 years and jump. When the carers came from inside the house and saw her jumping, they were astonished. "What are you doing, Mama?" they asked. She told them about her miraculous healing, and Pastor Kumuyi didn't know a thing about it until the hotel owner and the woman came to the crusade grounds in the stadium the next day to give a testimony about what God had done for her. Simply through Pastor Kumuyi walking across where she was sitting and his shadow going across the woman. There was also a Lebanese man in his late 60s who had been born in Kono in the east of Sierra Leone, but had been paralyzed on the right side by a stroke for the past 4 years. He couldn't move or talk, and Western medicine was no help, as he had seen several doctors to no avail. He heard about the crusade on the radio and asked his carer to bring him to Freetown. He came on the 3rd and last night of the crusade. As usual, Pastor Kumuyi prayed a short prayer for healing and deliverance at the end of the night service. There were over 10,000 people in the stands because the previous day's miracles had spread in the city. The Lebanese man suddenly felt power surge through his paralyzed side and limbs, and he could walk and talk. He was so overjoyed that he came to the podium, and I was standing right behind Pastor Kumuyi at the time, taking photographs. And this man came and took the hand of Pastor Kumuyi and laid it on his own head. That was the first laying of hands that I saw in the whole 4 weeks that I followed the pastor around. Then the Lebanese turned a preacher that night. He took the mic and told the crowd, "Jesus said, go and sin no more. I am going to sin no more." And then he turned to Pastor Kumuyi and said, "Thank you. You are a good pastor." Now let him get back to the book and finish. Chapter 12 and 13 are devoted to perspectives and personal stories. These 2 chapters are made up of extracts from the numerous letters and contributions submitted by an army of Pastor Kumuyi's followers, mentees, disciples, converts, members and leaders of Deeper Life in Africa, Europe, and across the world, as well as other church leaders from outside Deeper Life. This is a wealth of information that readers will particularly enjoy. I enjoy reading them. It shows the depth of people's appreciation of the life of this great man of God, Pastor Kumuyi. The book finishes with chapter 14, which looks at the years ahead. Pastor Kumuyi is now 80 years old. For the years ahead of him, he still has a lot of work to do. And he can do it with your usual cooperation as the members of the church. Please help him to accomplish the work he has before him in the years ahead. Remember the African proverb. If Pastor Kumuyi wants to go fast, he will have to go alone. But if he wants to go far, he will have to go together with you, the members of the church. So please rush and get your copies of the book. You will not regret buying them. Thank you for your attention.